Welcome back to Tokyo Ghoul Anime Review, episode number 15. This is reviewing the 15th episode of the anime, which is known as Union Close Game. Yeah. Despite the fact this is a series about an alternate timeline featuring a character named Ken Kaneki becomes a ghoul, this episode doesn't feature him at all. He is completely absent because it's back to what we saw briefly at the start of the first episode of the season. Yeah, the CGC versus the Aljuri tree. The whole episode is dedicated to that. Yeah, it's a D-Day version of what happened in Tokyo Ghoul. Yep, and what this particular episode does is quite bizarre. You have the first 13 pages of chapter 63. Pages 6 and 7 of chapter 73, 77, 77, 80, pages 1 through 8 of 81, 87 and 91, 6 through 20 of chapter 92, and 93. Yeah, so instead of like 9 chapters like there was a lot of time, this one is basically 8. But they take bits and pieces from other chapters, like most of chapters here and there. And the whole episode is set on the island that they briefly see at the start of this. It's basically just an expansion about what happened back in the opening episode. Yeah, as for if we're going to go back to Kaneki, even next week's episode we're not going to go back to Kaneki. We're still going to stick at this island. Yeah, it simply put what the Quincy squad was up to while what was happening at that prison. This is simply put what they were up to. And they were participating in this D-Day operation where they attacked the island fortress of the Aljuri tree, and there are people getting strangled. There's lots of screaming in this episode, like more than usual. I mean, there's a good I'd say about half the episode's full of almost nothing but screaming and saws going about. There's torture in this episode. Yes. If you think the series is dark, this is probably by far the darkest episode of the entire series. It's not like we can't see what's going on. Oh no, it's not that. It's the tone. It's so dark. It's like you see a bunch of, not a lot of gore per se. You see a little bit of blood here and there. There's a few characters aside from the Quincy squad show up in this episode, minus the character who got killed off in the previous season. Yeah, they all take part. I would say a lot of them only appear for like 2 scenes. Yes. The only characters who get a good chunk of screen time is the daughter of the CGC investigator who was killed off in season 1 of Tokyo Ghoul. Excuse me. Yeah, she's a good chunk of this episode. And her former partner she's in love with. Yeah, he shows up in this episode. Armand. Yeah, he shows up completely out of nowhere. He just busts through a window like, okay, how did he know that she was there? Yeah, in this episode they don't bother to explain. I think they do explain later on. Maybe this will kind of sense. Yeah. As for how he's alive, despite him apparently dying at the end of the Tokyo Ghoul manga, well, here's what happened to him. Basically, the same thing happened to him as what happened to Kaneki. He got turned into an artificial ghoul. Not kidding, he got turned into an artificial ghoul. And it's a different eye this time. Now, Kaneki's eye is technically his left eye that was turned into, well, it has turned black and a little red. Armand's eye is his right eye that was turned to like that. Yep. And he fights Takuza, who was a former investigator, who got turned into a full-blown ghoul. And they kind of show what Armand's, how he survived, where he got partially turned. Of course, you kind of see his process of being turned into a ghoul. You see some of it. Some of it got censored, which, thank God. I would not like to see the process of somebody turned artificial ghoul in this series. Yeah, we didn't see it with Kaneki, and I'm so happy we did not see it full-blown thing like it was in the anime. Like, I'm so happy about that. You can see flashes. You see everything from Armand's perspective. Oh yeah, and he has an artificial arm now, which is made up of parts of ghouls, which, yeah, it's like purplish. And let's see. Juzo shows up in the episode. Yeah. I would say this is the first time this whole season so far that he showed up. And this is only just the 3rd episode. Yes, just the 3rd episode third episode of the season, and he finally does show up. And it's always great to see this guy because he's a beloved character, and I know for a fact the anime is not gonna kill him off. I think even the narrator knew how popular Juzo is. That's why he never killed this character off, because he was so popular. He killed off other characters, but not this one. Oh no, he didn't kill off this one. So yeah, despite the fact we had that shocking cliffhanger at the end of last week's episode, this episode has nothing to do with that at all. Nope, it's just following up what happened in the opening part of episode 1 of this season. Yeah. And it's an okay episode. It does feel a bit rushed. I mean, last week I felt the pacing had definitely improved. This one, it's kind of like the way it was back in episode 1. It's kind of like that, but not as bad. It didn't feel as rushed as episode 1. Though the scenes did connect together somewhat really well. But the biggest problem in the episode is that not a lot of characters got screen time. It's like bam, bam, bam. Let's just cut here, cut there, cut there. I'm like, really? I'm sure that for some people, some of the stuff and the flashbacks coming completely out of nowhere was a bit jarring to people. And from the reception I've heard so far for this season, especially with I've never heard anything about the last week's episode, but the first episode, I heard, from what I heard about it, it was negative reception for the first episode. I mean, it looks good. It's just the problem with the first episode was its pacing. This one is just like that, but not as bad. It's like they kind of went the same type of pace they went with the way they went the first episode, but they toned it down. But I kind of thought that they should have improved. They should have took the tone of pacing it took from last week's episode and put it from that point forward. Instead, we kind of would go back to it was with the previous week's episode. Yeah, it's really weird. At least for in the case of some chapters, we can see some of them adapted. I mean, as of this episode, I would probably say the only chapters have still not been fully adapted yet is, as far as I can tell, 59 has still not been adapted. I don't know why this one has not been adapted yet at all. It's really weird. Let's see. 78, 79. I think that's, yeah. Those three have not been fully adapted yet. And, of course, the first 5 pages of 92 not been adapted yet. I kind of thought maybe they would have, they would have done a little bit better adaptation-wise. You kind of see some of the chapters that weren't adapted from last week's episodes. I would say about 2 of them. And you see most of the remaining stuff that wasn't adapted from chapter 81. But there's still like 2 pages left that's not adapted yet. I would not be surprised if they say these stuff for later. It's like, when it comes to Reed, they cut way too much out. Yeah, it's like, even for Reed, this is kind of a minor problem. With Reed, is they cut way too much in the manga. They cut just too much. Tokyo Ghoul, from what I know, from I remember watching it, the pacing was actually pretty good, and they kept a lot of stuff in. They're just cutting stuff completely. Yeah, it's like the people who made are, even though it's the same studio, it's Studio Parrot, it's kind of like they did not learn from the mistakes they made from Route A when it comes to cutting stuff, or at least altering stuff just to fit whatever narrative the series wants to do. But the episode was okay. It wasn't terrible. But I would say of the 3 episodes so far, episode 2 by far is the best episode because it's got good pacing. It feels as though it's got very good writing with it. And the action and the thing that felt very jarring. Here, I would say the cuts they made with this episode, like when they cut stuff here and there. The first episode, from my perspective, didn't feel like that at all. This episode did feel like that, where it's like you cut here, you cut to here, cut to here, cut to here, cut to here. It's really kind of jarring to see this. But overall, it's just an okay episode. It's not terrible. I like the animation style with it. It's just that the problem with this episode is, and like I said, same problem with the first episode, the pacing. It's bad, but not as bad as episode 1. Though this one's a little bit, this one's a little bit more noticeable, where this episode feels very rushed. It doesn't feel like itself is incomplete. No, it doesn't feel like that. It's just how the pacing for it looks kind of bad. But my other problem with the episode, aside from the pacing, is that a lot of the characters don't get a lot of screen time, and a good chunk of the cast, like Kaneki. Yeah, in the episode, they don't specifically say where Kaneki is. They could at least throw a line in here like, "Oh, Kaneki's not here because he's escorting out of the prison, and he was not invited to take part in this operation." That could have been something, but they didn't put that in here at all. Nope. So overall, an okay episode. Okay. The next review I plan on doing is a review of the newest chapter of Seven Deadly Sins. Yep. Until I see you next review. Bye.